So now I want to get these values from our text boxes. So for the first value, you can see that we have this lion. So instead of hard coding this value, I can actually delete this value here, this lion. And here I can just type in TXT name dot text. So let me actually put it here. So text. So if I hover over this text here, it says that the data type of this text is actually string. So this means that it is okay to put this value here because the first argument is going to be of type string here, the name. But what happens with this one, 25, which is going to be the age of the animal? This is of type integer. So here I can type in TXTBox age dot text. But this is of type string, and we must actually pass a value of type integer. So here we must actually convert this value to an integer value. So int dot parse, and then this parse method is going to convert this value that we pass as an argument to this method, to this parse method. It's going to convert it to an integer value. So now the problem is solved. So let's look at these other arguments. So this one, which is going to be the animal power. So again, I can just type in TXTBox power.text, and now I can convert this one to actually to a decimal value. This is of type decimal, right? So I can't just type in integer. I need to type in decimal dot parse. So this method is going to convert this string value that we pass here to a decimal value, right? So this parse method is actually defined for all these primitive data types. And finally, we have this animal speed. So let's delete this value and just type in here TXTBox speed dot text. And now we just need to convert this value to actually to a decimal value. So decimal dot parse, and let's actually pass this string value to this parse method. So it's gonna convert this value to a decimal value. And now we have no errors here. So this method lbl result.text is gonna actually get the animal name, age, power, and speed. So let's run our application now. And now we need to actually just enter some values here, and then we can actually click on this button in order to see the results here. So here, let me tell you that we must actually, for this application, we must pass some values here. Otherwise, our application is going to crash. It's going to actually create an exception. I'll talk more about exception handling later, but for this application, we assume that the user enters some valid values here. So for the name, I can actually say tiger, right? This is the name of the animal. For the age, I can say 30. For the power, I can say 7,000. For the speed, I can say 3,000, right? And now let's click on this button, show me the result. And now we can see these values: tiger, animal name, tiger, animal age 30, animal power 7,000, and animal speed 3,000. That's it, right? So I can actually change this power to, for example, a decimal value. For example, this one. Let's click on this button again, and now we can see that this value is changed. Or this one, for example. Let's click on this button again, and here we can see this value is changed. So that's it. And now let's actually go into the debugging mode. So let's close this program and let's close this output window. Now I want to create a breakpoint here in line number 24 when I actually created this lion object. So here inside this left sidebar, this gray area, just click on it here in order to create a breakpoint. And you can see that this line of code is actually highlighted. And this means that the breakpoint is going to start from this line of code, and the execution of the program is going to actually stop here, and then we can control the execution, the flow of the program. So here, in order to debug, at the top menu, just click on debug, and then here click on start debugging, or you can actually click on F5 on your keyboard. Start debugging. So now let's pass some values. So for the name, I can say, for example, the name of my animal is going to be leopard, right? And the age is going to be, for example, 12. The power is going to be 3,000, and the speed is going to be 6,000, right? Now, if I click on this button, the program is going to be stopped in this line of code here, in line number 24. So let's click on this here, and now, as you can see, the program stopped. The program is about to actually execute this line of code here. Make sure that you have this autos area open. Let's close this properties view here. Now inside this autos area, you can see all these values here, txt box age. You can see that for example, for the txt box age, we pass this value number 12. And all these values, let's actually click on this one, step into, right? Let's click on this step into. And now it's going to actually go ahead and execute this constructor. Remember that I told you, whenever that we are going to create an object of any type, the constructor of that type is going to be actually called. So now it's going to actually execute this constructor of this animal class. Let's click on this step over in order to go and execute this constructor in its entirety. And now it's about to execute this line of code here in line number 20. It's going to assign this name value that we get as a parameter from this method. It's going to assign this value to this name property. So now if I actually click on this, right click on this name property here, and then just click on step into specific, and it's going to actually only give us this option, animal.name.set. So this means that it is going to call the setter method of this name property of this animal class, right? Because we are setting a value to this name property. So let's right click on it again, step into a specific, animal name.set. If I click on it, it is going to actually highlight this setter, right? That's it. And now if I actually click on this step over, it's going to go back to this constructor again. Let's click on step over again in order to execute this line of code in its entirety. And now this line of code is executed, and inside this autos area, you can see that this name value is leopard, right? And if I actually open this here, so remember I told you this refers to an instance of type animal, right? So let's actually open this here, and here it says that the name property is leopard here. So now we have this age value here, and now as you can see, we are assigning this age value to this age instance variable directly. So it's not recommended to do this because we have actually properties for these age variables, for these age instance variables, or this power instance variable, or this speed instance variable. So it's not recommended. It's not a good programming practice to do this one. So let's stop the program and let's actually refactor our code. So refactoring means that you actually, for example, change your codes, and your codes would be more perfect. This means refactoring. So here we don't want to assign the age value to this age instance variable directly. We have a property for this one, so we don't want to do that. Let's actually just change this age to age property. Let's change this power to power property, right? Let's change this speed to speed property, right? This is actually a good programming practice. If you want to be employed as a C# developer, these consistencies actually really matters. So make sure to actually write your codes in this way. So now let's actually click on this debugging mode again. So debug, start debugging. And now the program started again. So the name of the animal again is going to be, for example, lion, and the age is going to be 24. The power is going to be 36, for example. The speed is going to be 32. Let's click on this, show me the result. And now it's about to execute this line of code here. So let's click on this step into, and now it's going to actually execute this constructor, step over. So we know how this property works. Let's click on this step over in order to execute this line of code in its entirety. And now it's about to execute this line of code. Age value, which is going to actually get this value from this age value, and it's going to assign it to this age property. If I hover over this age value, it says this value is 24, right? Let me show you the program. So it's not allowing us to show the program, but in the autos area, you can see this value here, 24, as the age value. If I right click on this age here, this age property, and I can actually go into step into specific, and it says animal.age.setter. So it's about to execute the setter of this age property, and you can see that this setter is private, and this means that only the variables or the methods or the constructor of this animal class can access this setter. This is a private setter, and it's about to execute this setter. And here we created an if statement, and it says if the value that is going to be assigned to this age property is greater than 0, then that value is a valid value, and then we can assign that value to this age instance variable. So it's really actually recommended that you use properties in order to assign a value to your instance variables. So let's click on this step over, step over, step over in order to execute this line of code, and now it's done. So now this line of code is actually executed. Let's click on it again. And now in the autos area, you can see that it says that the animal age is 24 here. So now it's about to execute this line of code here. Again, it's going to actually go ahead and call the setter, and then it's going to actually check whether the power value, the value that is going to be assigned to this property, is actually a valid value. Then it's going to actually assign this value to the power instance variable. So let's click on this step over again, and done. This object is created with the values that you can see here, right? And then we can actually click on this one here, step over, in order to execute this line of code here, lbl result.text. Let's click on it again, step over. So now in the autos area, you can see that it says lbl result here, and you can see that the animal name here, animal age, and animal power, and all these other values here, right? So that's it. But let's actually go back to our Visual Studio. Let's stop the program. And now I want to actually again debug the application, but this time I want to pass some invalid values to our text boxes, and let's see what happens now.